Cassar-Daley. What an absolute pleasure to have you not only on the green room but actually in person with me as well.
Face to face is much better, Ian, isn't it?
I reckon, especially with this wonderful face here of young Tiana.
Not so young, but I will take it. Thank you. I mean, we are here today obviously having a nice old chat, but there is something extremely exciting that we are also here for, to chat about the amazing announcement of you two finally teaming up and touring for the Together Alone tour.
Yeah.
We've been listening to some music even before we came and said g'day to you that I reckon really does cross paths really easily. And every time Ian and I have sat down and had a play, it just feels really natural. It feels like it's growing from the same tree. So I'm very excited about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some might say Troy's from a country background, I'm from a rock background, but I think their influences are very varied and go right back into deep American kind of roots music. Growing up as a kid in Alice Springs, there was always tons of both styles of music on the radio. Lots of country, Hank Williams, and then heaps of Ray Charles and Sam Cooke at the same time. So.
An amazing amalgamation of all the good stuff.
And my mum was the same with her record collection. It was she had Ray Charles in amongst the Merle Haggard and all the other things as well. And I'd sit there going, what do I like? And she had a bloke called O.C. Smith as well.
Yeah.
And he was the meld between the two for me too. He had this country thing, but then he would go into this soul blues thing as well. And I liked it so much, I used to sit there and be absolutely glued to that record player.
How could you not be? I'm already wanting to go and raid the record collection after this. I may just help myself. But it's an incredible thing. I mean, you both are obviously such icons of the Australian industry, and like you said, you kind of seemingly are from these different worlds, but obviously you've been contemporaries as you've kind of progressed in your careers along the way. But why now with this tour of you two together? How did this finally come to be?
I think it's just to me it felt like it was always on the cards, but more than probably a good 10 years ago, Troy was doing a slightly different record from what he might normally do, a bit of soul stuff, a bit of blues, and invited me to come along and share a vocal on a famous old track, Dark End of the Street. I reckon the seeds were sown right then and there for something to happen in the future.
And even back then, it just felt natural too. I mean, if you are a guitar player and a singer, I think you should be able to sit down with another guitar player and a singer and make some reasonable noise, you know. And every time we've done it this last week, and even when you're sitting around waiting on a photo shoot to be done, you're actually just feeling each other out, like, and going, right, I reckon this is going to work. When we take this to stage, it should feel natural. And Tiana, it feels nothing but natural to me, and it's been great for me. I mean, I snuck in and saw Cold Chisel as a kid. I wasn't a kid. I was a little bit underage.
He's trying to say he's younger than me.
Yeah, I caught that.
I did sneak in to see him when I was in my late teens, and it was incredible to get in and have a look at a band that was, you know, high to their powers, a young guitar player from Alice Springs that everyone went, ha, get a load of this guy. That's the sort of thing you need as inspiration when you're coming through the ranks and you first plug in an electric guitar. Ian made me want to get on a Stratocaster. I'd never seen a proper Strat before. So I was playing a Les Paul copy, and I looked at Ian playing this Strat. I don't know what it was back then, but it looked pretty impressive to me. So that was the first thing I wanted to do, was trade this thing on something that was going to be more of a single coil sound. And that was it for me. I was sold on that sound, and I think we're all still looking for the sound, aren't we?
You never stop.
No.
Oh, it's the common drive. It's the common urge. And I love that you kind of shared that story, because I have read that you said the second you did see him play for the first time, when Mossy was on stage, you were hooked. Was that the very first time you actually caught it in action? Like, had you heard all the recordings beforehand and already consumed it, and then the rest was history? Oh,
I'd heard the records. I mean, we all had the records at home, and you know, to listen to the tones on the record is one thing, but I think the effect of a live show, when you finally get to see them live, is another. That's another level of engagement. And when I finally saw that, I think it made me rethink about what I was doing. I mean, I was wanting to play electric sort of country guitar too, because that was obviously the most important staple that I had in my life at the time. But I always had this love of the rock thing and the sustaining sort of notes, things that you had to work on over years and years and years of playing. And Ian already had it down as a young bloke in Chisel, and you would have almost been the youngest fella in the band, wouldn't you, really?
Yeah, second youngest.
Yeah.
Barnsley's the youngest.
Yeah, but he already had this incredible worked out thing well before his time. It takes a long time to actually get that thing sussed out. So to be able to sit with someone that's, you've obviously admired for a long time too, but also to make a bit of music, there's nowhere to hide Tiana behind acoustic guitars. It's an incredible thing to sit down and do.
Absolutely. It's so intimate. And I guess for you in reverse, Ian, I know you've spoken about Troy being a bit of a inspiration for yourself as well. When was the first time you actually got to catch this gentleman live in action for the first time? Do you remember? I put him on the spot. Or let's rephrase then. Was there a moment that you just remember seeing him and just feeling and seeing something incredibly special on stage?
It's more about just the hearing the voice. It's really the voice. It's the deep, rich timbre Troy's got, and that I'd straight away I thought Troy Cassar-Daley, whatever, all those country guys, and then I heard Troy sing. Hang on, that guy's got a ton of blues in there. I like it.
And you're obviously not a stranger to jumping up on stage with a band yourself in the past, and then obviously you did re-emerge as a solo artist back in the day as well. In terms of how you approach like these sort of shows as more of a solo or dare I say co-headline in this scenario, how different is that to kind of preparing for, let's say, a Cold Chisel show back in the day? Is it night and day, or is it just muscle memory at this point for you?
Oh, it's a little bit muscle memory. Troy and I were discussing the first, because we both sort of, we probably learnt on acoustics, and then we've got our first electric, and it was goodbye acoustic. Don't need you anymore. I'm going to be a rock. I'm going to rock out from turn amplifiers up. But then the whole solo acoustic thing kind of came into fashion. Whatever, from maybe beginning with the whole unplugged Nirvana thing and all that sort of, then suddenly there was a whole world out there of going out and doing gigs solo. And if you weren't used to it, man, the first time you did one, it was an absolute shock. It was like, it's weird. I'm playing this gig knowing that I'm solo, but okay, let's started playing it. I literally look around for the band.
Yeah.
Even though I knew I was solo. It was like,
exactly.
shit.
And it's so true, because it's almost like relearning your craft again, because you've been used to having the cushion that's a band. And it took me, when I did a whole acoustic tour many years ago, where I just dragged like an old Vinnie's lounge out on stage and sit and play for people by yourself. And it's pretty disarming, because it's just the only thing between you and a crowd is the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And that's the only filter you've got, So I had to wait for 3 or 4 shows for the songs to settle down long enough for me to realise I wasn't in a band anymore.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah, and then it all settles down and changes again. And it's a beautiful moment when you can actually just engage a crowd with an acoustic guitar, because, they don't have to listen. The lyrics are different. You appreciate the lyrics a lot more.
Yeah, well, it forces you actually to go back, and because hang on, I've got to figure out a new way to do this. Even though I've been doing this songs for 20 years, I've never done it on my own, and it's good. You rediscover the song, and I found sort of new meaning in the lyrics, because I had to sort of really think about how I'm going to tell the story, and
Yeah, and I guess on that note too, like COVID has really made for a lot of people, they've had to really rethink how they do shows and also rethink the capacities. I mean, for a lot of artists who are used to playing more, larger venues and booking all that kind of thing, they've had to kind of have that more intimate time. Do you guys tend to find yourselves enjoying one over the other these days, considering you've had the whole gamut of little pub shows and quite large stadium shows and all that? Is there a preference at this point with having that connection in the smaller space, or do you still love that rush of jumping out and having that sea of faces in front of you?
Whatever. I don't know, having the cake and eat it too. There's something really special about both. There's something, if you're on your own and you've got a good sized crowd there, you kind of feel, I don't know, feel like I did this is me, I own this, I can take this wherever I like. You might get to a line in a song one night and think this needs to be screamed to the world.
Yep.
The next night you might get to the same line and go, you know what? No, I reckon it needs to be whispered, and you can do that. With a band, you can't do that. You can't be.
Yeah, there's no dynamic. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I felt the same when we opened up for Chisel out at Tamworth, where you fellas were just on the end of the Blood Moon tour. It was an incredible thing to watch what Ian does on the electric and does his thing, and it fits in so beautifully, and they've all got these beautiful strengths, all the band. And then you see him on acoustic guitar, and it's like, okay, he's got the reins of the horse here, And the best thing is, you know, you can guide it left or right. And I think being an acoustic act is really important for that. And there's this engagement with your audience. They come up to you sometimes, maybe say something as you're packing the car, and they go, "Oh, I didn't know that song was about such and such," until they heard you acoustic. You know, it's a great reaction to have.
I used to get, geez, I knew you sang, but I didn't know you could sing.
The ultimate compliment.
That was only about 35 years after I've been.
Hey, it's better late than never, isn't it? Yeah. We get there eventually. And I want to come back to that song meaning, I should say, in a little bit, but just in regards to this upcoming tour, given the quite extensive back catalogue from both your respective careers, how the hell did you decide on a set list for this upcoming tour?
Yeah, well, that's something we've got to work out yet.
That's yet to be discussed. I mean, but you'll have obvious songs that you feel need to be a part.
We both have an obvious short list, and then we're going to, you know, have a bit of fun, hopefully, with the rest sort of.
I think the peripheral ones are going to be more fun to work out because we've got ones that people will expect that you really can't get out of town alive without playing. But there's a few things that I'd love to float to Ian as these songs we might play during some of the VIP ticket holder things where we get a chance to just do some covers or play something really interesting or old from our back catalogue. And I think it'll be a great test for our memories too.
Yes, 100%. And, you know, wake you up and keep you alive.
Yeah.
And for you both, as we've touched on, you've played so many shows. I'm not going to sit here and list how many you have because we don't have that amount of time. But how do you guys kind of amp yourselves up for these live shows? Like, do you have a certain ritual or something tried and true that kind of really helps you get that energy, get focused and get out on stage, or do you just wing it? Is it just that easy for you both these days?
Well, no, luckily, I mean, I think, you know, for me, there's still a certain amount of nerves. You know, I like to think that as gradually, you know, by the time if I make 90, I might actually finally be able to get out to walk, be able to get to walk on stage without being nervous. But if you don't have that, you got to have a certain amount, a healthy amount of that, because it gets you. You got to get up. You got to be ready to start at a certain energy level and a certain commitment level.
And it probably means you respect the gig too. You know, respect the role you're playing. You get that fear of, I don't know, you don't want to let people down.
You don't want to let people down. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, you sort of know that. You know, it's that old adage. You sort of, you know, one mistake, then you've got to do 10 good deeds to sort of rectify it. You know, so you want every show to. Well, you know, I'm getting to the stage where that clock's ticking, and you need every show to count. You don't want to have a bad show and then try and have to be catch up. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess no song or tour or show is ever the same in that respect too, in a way, and it's kind of nice because it hopefully keeps you guys a bit more interested, but also keeps the fans happy and on their toes as well. So
I reckon, you know, there'll be a fair bit of spontaneity in this show, and that's one thing that you have to have. Like if you did the same show in one town as you did in the next, it would be just like you wouldn't even get nerves after a while. It'd be like, oh, I know exactly what's going on. Set list hasn't changed or whatever, but I think the spontaneity is what keeps it fresh, and it also makes it better for the audience to watch.
Yeah, well, it'll catch out any reviewers too who might look at the set list from the previous night and not show up and try to review it, so it's a good way to know if people are there.
Yes, yes. I thought of that.
Oh, I've just outed myself. No. But I know, Troy, obviously, like, you did release your new album quite recently that did kind of come out of quite a extensive year for obviously a lot of us, but there was a lot going on, and a beautiful addition to that album was an incredible final collaboration with you guys with South, and we got to finally see the music video and the clip this year. I read that it kind of was a bit of a jam session. Like, did you actually plan to sit down and have a song come out of it, or was it just a jam session that went very, very right and this song eventuated?
When Ian was coming through Brisbane, I always wanted to try and catch him and say, I'd love to be able to get together and write a song. Because when you've known someone long enough, you know, it's time to sit down and have a strum and see what falls out of the sky, you know. And when he was on his way over, Ian said, oh, I might have to go back and get my acoustic. You know, I said, look, keep driving, because where you're coming, there's going to be quite a few guitars. But I had an electric set up for him. Oh. And I thought, well, if Ian's coming to my house, I want to set up a little electric world where he sits so that we can look at each other and play off each other, just like we will on stage. And it was a good afternoon, Ian, to be able to sit and have a play so nice to hear your own gear sound like Ian Moss instead of it sounding like crummy old me. And it was just, it really is good. I thought I plugged him into some of my favourite pedals, but he still made it sound like himself. And that's where the song starts. And I wanted to write something that honoured our blue collar heritage as well, because we've got a lot of people that have been hard-working people in our past. And that's where the song started pretty much, with just a riff,
And how much of it did Ian inject into it? I know there's a swear word kicking around in that, which is not quite common, I
that was
believe.
me. In fact, that was the only word I wrote.
That's it, if you were one word.
Yeah, we got into a bit of trouble, but I threw him under the bus. I said, you can sing that.
Covered you.
But in the context of what we were talking about, well, the world is on your shoulders, when you're in these situations, especially if you're working class as well. And when you hear it in conversation, it makes perfect sense. And so it was totally, it needed to be in there.
Yeah.
And I think that when your song comes together like that, and then we got a chance when we recorded it, it was really good to be able to actually sit in the same room and go work off each other the way we did.
Absolutely. And I guess on that note too, like as we touched on earlier with the whole song meaning kind of thing, obviously there's a lot of authenticity in both of what you write and in this particular song itself, but everyone's always obviously looking into and unpacking lyrics once the song goes out into the world. How much of your stuff for both of you is autobiographical? Like, is this a case of bringing all the reality into it? And is it every time you're bringing a lot of yourselves into it to kind of have, whether it's catharsis or other, or do you kind of get a mixture of outside influences and not so much looking in and being introspective?
I don't know. I still don't consider myself that prolific a writer, but it's more influences, inspiration, not particularly autobiographical at all.
It's funny where it works. I mean, sometimes you'll have a real flow of songs. Other times I've got nothing, and I sort of went into COVID with nothing. I had a black heart from losing my father, and he took his own life. It was one of the shittiest times of my life, sorry to say that. But it really affected me a lot more than I thought it would, because I sort of had a lot of questions. And I just sort of went into COVID, and this was an unload. I didn't mean to write this record either like the way I did, but if there's one thing it did do is it got me a place to let it out. And my Indigenous family at home was a great comfort for me, because I went home and I spent a lot of time talking with my older uncles. That was good for me, but then I got home and had to face my family and get my way out of it. And the only way out of it was wait till my wife goes to work, and she was a radio announcer, so she's obviously, it was more essential. And then I'd go downstairs and shut the door and take my dog down there and try and write songs and try and talk about the grief. But I was able to at least get rid of a bit of it. And if people have listened to this record, I know they're a bit scared by it, because it's a lot more cranky than other ones I've made. But I did have a little bit of anger going into this record, and I wanted to play more guitar and just sit down and be the musician in the band again, instead of being in the producing and stuff. I got a producer. My wife said, you need a producer, to take your mind off it so you can be back at being a muso again. And it was good advice, because we weren't on good terms. We were hardly talking. And that was about the only sense we sort of made. And then it all went better from there.
Yeah. And with that whole thing, I mean, you say there's a lot of anger in it. I feel like everyone was probably needing a way to kind of work through a lot of what they're experiencing themselves. And I guess the one good thing about art is that we kind of can have a connection, even if it has nothing to do with our own personal lives. Like I was chatting with a band where they were saying, should we release an album? We don't know, because it was a pop album. And it's like,
it's happy.
Sometimes you need, but I think you need the balance as well. Or me personally, I do. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. People can still latch onto it and connect with it. And that's also what will happen, I feel like, when you guys jump up on stage, is having this connection and a way to kind of work through whatever the hell we all went through in the last year.
I reckon, Ian, you're doing most touring out of both of us right now. Have you noticed a difference with people showing that appreciation for a live show again?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, and they come up not happy to. They're more than happy to come up and tell you. And I've sort of found, I didn't realise it, but I'm starting to actually even talk a lot more and communicate and be on a personal level, which I've always been too, after all these years, a bit nervous about doing. Yeah. And that's with the recent tour been doing people have been come up and saying, you know, we always loved your singing and guitar playing, but what's been fantastic is the way you've relaxed and you've let us in and you're talking to us. And I was kind of half didn't even realise I was doing it. So maybe that's.
So maybe it goes both ways too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I took gigs for granted before COVID. I sort of thought, we'll be right. This will be gone in a minute.
Yep.
And then we cruise into 2020 and everything starts falling over like dominoes. And then you got no gigs. And then you finally get back and you go, I'm not going to take another one of these for granted again.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you want to give more, much as you try to all the time when you're playing. I think I was sort of slackening off a little bit at times. Where I thought I was just going through the motions a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and in reverse too, I mean, how many people are like, I can go anytime, I'll just skip it, go next time.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. And now people are actually able to come and do it. So, yeah, bring it on, I say.
Oh, yeah.
And I know obviously you guys are both, I mean, more so recently we've finally been able to realise the vocal supremacy of Ian Moss as well. Troy, well, I feel like you're both levelling up. We're reaching it.
Absolutely. I mean,
Troy's not on board.
this has always been a pleasure to watch when Ian played guitar, but then when I first heard him sing at South Grafton Ex-Services Club, South Grafton Ex-Services Club, we all just went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's going on there too, as well as the guitar playing. So, you know, it really is one of those, you don't hear triple threat used very often, but when you write great songs or you play great guitar and then you open your mouth and sing like that, it's a rarity.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, for both of you then, whether it's from the guitar or the vocalist world, because you have all these strings to your bows, you're both overachievers and that's very, very obvious. Is there a key influence or an artist that really kickstarted both your musical journeys? Like, was there someone that really made you suddenly realise this is what I want to do with my life?
One particular person, I don't know. It's just there's too many influences from what you used to hear on the radio as a kid. I mean, you know, I think even John D. Loudermilk and Johnny Horton sort of kicked me off, and even right back then I thought this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it's funny. Like there's always a handful of people that you used to watch, and there was obviously like Slim Dusty when he first came out. I always thought to myself, wow, he's singing really authentically about this country, and that's one thing that sucked me into that. And then I found Merle Haggard, and then I found Ray Charles, and I went on this road, and the little road just kept branching off every now and then finding its way somewhere else. And by the time we got to Chisel and got to the things that were really authentically Australian, that's when we realised we actually had something to talk about here in Australia too, as musicians. And I think with Don and with Ian and everyone's writing that contributed to that band, it really gave us a voice. Whereas before, there weren't a lot of rock bands around that were doing that.
Yeah.
And when you read their stories and where they came through to get themselves to where they are, it's a fascinating ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess too, given that it is a bit of a guitar fest coming up too, what guitars will we be seeing you gentlemen sporting on stage? Are we going to see a nice little mixture?
No, not really.
Look,
I'm going to bring one, possibly two, because I've just had a little guitar case made up for two guitars to take away. But there's an old one that I want to bring away. The me road guitar is a Takamine, and it's been that for a long, long time. But there's a little old Martin that I was given in 2019. I was on tour, and a fella came to the rehearsal, and he said, I want to give you a guitar. It's been in our family since 1955. And he said, but no one plays now. And I went, what is it? He said, it's an old Martin. And I said, look, for starters, it's probably worth some money, so I don't think I can take it. But show me anyway. I'm interested to see it. And he pulled it out of the car. It had no strings. It had a scrunched up letter to Martin, the company in America, in the sound hole. And it was this little 1942 0018. And I went, nah, sorry. He said, you know what? My wife has gotten me to drive down here 20 Ks to give this to you. It'll break her heart if you say no.
All right.
Oh, okay, then.
Let me think about that.
Let me think about that for just a second. Okay, I'll take it back. Anyway, I took it home and gave it to a guitar builder. And when I was sitting and writing in the middle of COVID, this little thing was my best friend. It's the best guitar I've ever owned. And I don't endorse any guitars, really. I mean, I play Takaminis because they work and I love them. But this Martin, I've never owned a Martin like it. And it had a voice. Every time you strummed it, it felt like a friend talking to you. Is that stupid?
Makes total
not at all.
sense.
It just had it had its own voice.
Yeah.
And every time I sit with it in front of the phone and record it to send to my son or something, saying, have a listen to this whole thing this morning, songs fell out of it in COVID. I had a friend of ours, Glenn Hanna, that was a good mate of mine, took his own life just before in 2019. And I wrote a song for him on it. It was one of the first songs that fell out of it, you know. I wrote it for his wife, actually, because she was the one that was left behind. And so it really helped me through having that whole thing there. I don't know why. It came at the right time and old mate handed it over. And I've never been sentimental about many things, especially instruments, because they're working things. But this little thing has got its voice, and it may poke out for a little play every now and then. I just never know. I might bring it because I'm sure Ian would like to meet it.
Yes. Have to arrange. Maybe it can come to the VIP
We'll do a little meet and greet, I think.
You have to sign up ahead of time. And what about yourself, sir? Will we be seeing anything special on stage?
Look, I'm still working on that. I want to sort of maybe do something. Currently I play maintenance, doing supporting the Aussie company. But I'd like to bring something fresh to Troy and my tour. So I'm looking into a couple of things. Stay tuned.
Yes, watch
and
this
from what I've
space.
heard with these other guitars, they are amazing.
Yes.
So it's been great to see us both, reaching into the bag of tricks to say, what can we bring?
Yeah.
What can we make that's special about the show?
Yeah,
and give people a unique experience. I mean, it's not very often that you can get people from these genres that meet and just do something like this. So for both of us, it'll be a great experience, I reckon.
Yeah, and an amazing thing too is you are taking it not just to the usual suspects or the capital cities, you're taking it to a lot of amazing regional locations, obviously going a bit closer to home for both of you. How will it feel to play some of these songs that have absolutely shaped and made your career very close to home and out of the capital cities?
Well, I'm looking forward to Alice Springs. I think we're playing the Araluen, I think.
Araluen Theatre,
That'll be a highlight for me. And we're also playing Grafton in the middle of the Jacaranda Festival.
Oh. Yeah, at the Sheraton.
At the Sheraton Theatre.
Nataris backwards.
Yeah, Nataris, that's right. And if Don Walker could ever make a gig, this is the one he should come down and have a look at, because he'd go home, and it's sort of like amazing to think, even when Ian first mentioned Alice Springs in one of his songs off Matchbook, I'd been through there, and it always reminds me of how much you should want to get back when you hear town names like that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to being able to see that in action and up through the territory.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's...
Yeah. Where's the list?
Yes,
where is that list?
Read out the gig list.
Yeah. We're going to some really special places too. So, like you say, when you play that beautiful theatre in Toowoomba, and every time you go to the Empire, it was about to be torn down. Like most theatres in Australia, they were about to knock it over. And some local people with some money just said, no, we have to restore this place. When you play these theatres, it makes you appreciate old things. And to still have some new sounds jumping around there, it's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess given that this is going to be a bit of a celebration of both of your careers to a certain extent, if we had to kind of put a pin into something specific, what is it that you both love most about what you're doing? What keeps driving you to pursue this incredible journey you both continue to be on?
I don't know. Still wanting to reach out and make people feel good. Still wanting to, work with great fellow musicians and both of us work together to produce something for the people. And plus, I think Troy's like me. You never stop trying to get better as a singer, as a player, and you want to keep doing that and trying to give that to people.
Yeah.
This is definitely something. Selfishly, I think I'm going to come out a better guitar player at the other end, but I think personally, I'd like to make sure that people that come along feel like they've seen something pretty unique. And I know that every time we play together, it's always feeling like it's just a perfect fit. And but yeah, like I say, I think I'm going to learn out of this as well. I think that's the best part of
Me too.
Being able to collaborate with friends like this on a professional level too. It's different to sitting backstage and having a yarn. Yeah. This is a chance to actually get together and properly collaborate,
Yeah, 100%. Well, to close us out today, to use a very cliched question, given we are on the Green Room podcast, for both of you, you're about to jump on the road. What's an essential item you need to have backstage in your green room to ensure you get through the show in one piece?
I didn't talk to you about the belly dancers, did I?
Should we write a list? We'll start a list. I'll write it down and we'll get it sent through to all the venues. Or will he be the belly dancer?
Well,
No? Not Will he be the belly dancer?
Oh, no. I
Plenty
think
of belly at the moment.
join the club. No, go on, Ian. What do you reckon?
Sorry, you got me. You caught me off guard there.
If I'm drinking, which goes up and down sometimes.
Nice bottle of Shiraz for me.
Yeah, well, I'll probably a little nip of vodka before I go in there to take the nerves away.
Yeah.
People don't realise that you do take the nerves away still, and they're there.
Yeah, it's true.
They're there. And anything like that just to sort of help you up, and then off you go.
Yeah.
Off you go. Do your best.
I'm very happy about that. I'm Ukrainian, so vodka's, in my blood basically. So this is a great answer.
I've got a bit in my blood too.
Oh, excellent.
It's not genetic though.
No. It was not inherited. Well, we might have some afterwards then. But thank you so much, Ian and Troy, for joining me on the Green Room. This Together Alone tour is going to be absolutely phenomenal and such a joy for your fans and obviously for both of you as well. So good times ahead.
Thanks, Tiana.
Thanks, Tiana.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thank you
Zig.
so much.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, gentlemen.
No worries. Thank you.
The Green Room with Tiana Speter is a podcast from the Handshake Agency Network, produced by Tiana Speter and Andrew Mast, with Pharrell D'Souza and Henry Gibson providing research. Recorded and engineered by Zig Parker, executive producer Craig Trewy.